Political science.
I mean, why do we have fields? I mean, we have discipline in fields for obvious reasons, but even in this age where everything seems to be really specialized, there's something about knowledge being interconnected, integrated. If you don't have integrated understandings, then you don't really have everything that you should have. One of my favorite expressions is that the field of history degenerates into trivia, and the field of philosophy degenerates into an irrelevant conversation. I chose the field of politics because for me, politics wasn't really a field. All that the study of politics really is it is a concern. That's all it is. It's just a concern. It's not like, radiology or something. Everyone is involved in politics to some extent. I mean, it's mass marketed that way. In other words, it's a basic concern. And lots of people get at this concern with their own experience. They've run for office or something. And sometimes they get at it with witticisms, with punditry. Journalists have a lot of opinions on it. It's the thing about politics. Everyone's got an opinion on it. But what's critical is that although the field is organized around this general concern, it isn't really possible to differentiate the way that you get at this concern unless you master other fields. In other words, fields not your own. I mean, you should know a little about history. Actually, here's what I'm going to say. I'm not going to say which fields you should know because I think each scholar can pick their own assortment of fields. For me, history is important. Philosophy is important. But think of all the others that also are important. You need to know something about sociology. I mean, you need to know something about statistics. There's a lot you need to know something about law. What is law, too? I mean, we're not talking just court cases and precedent. We're talking about public policy, the statutes and the things that are written. Trying to figure out what the best public policy should be for something is itself a very technical question. So there's a lot of things that go into it, the input fields. And so therefore, I kind of see the study of politics. I used a picture of 5 points. In cities sometimes have a 5 points. Like there's an intersection where there are different roads flow into it. It was a coming together of all these other fields and all these other disciplines. And I don't think you can engage in a competent discussion of politics of anything, unless you go outside your field, this discipline that they call political science.
What about graduate school?
The study of political science in graduate school, I think, really is getting problematic because rather than stressing the interconnectivity of these other fields, they've been pushing them out. And they've been doing this for a long time. This isn't anything new. Political science so much wants to be this mathematical thing now, and I don't know. This is a long debate. It's an old debate. It's a tiring debate. I'm not going to add anything more to it. But what I am going to say is just a couple of things that I think are obviously true, and that is, when you graduate with a PhD in political science, you're really not broadly trained, and more and more, you're not really intellectually interesting. And so that means that you have to get that. When you get a PhD, you haven't stopped your training. You're just getting your training started. Really think of getting a PhD in political science like basic training. Now you still got to go off to war. You know what I mean? So what does that mean? Well, you need to have your nose in something other than the political science journals. If whatever you're doing, whatever you're teaching, whatever your interest is, you have got to start mastering these other fields with respect to what they're saying about it. I love history because history gives context, and I love philosophy because philosophy sharpens and clarifies the way we think, especially when it's done using the right tools. Again, here I'm alluding to Wittgenstein.
What advice can you give about the best way to become multidisciplinary?
The one thing I would say is learn how to triangulate. When you go into another field, I don't want to use the word invade, but when someone goes into another field, there's 2 traps. One is they go for mainstream stuff, which is fine. You've got to start with that. When I go into history, I make a distinction between, mainstream history. Let's say I'm talking about colonial America. Well, I'm going to go to Gordon Wood. Well, I'm also going to go to Joe Ellis. Some of these books are popular books, but as long as you read them and you otherwise have a foundation, then that's fine. But the one thing you need to do also is triangulate. Just because one book says something or one source says something, you've got to have it in multiple places. And if there's discussions on it, you got to know those things. So putting those in your toolkit, when you go about mixing it with what you have in political science, that's pretty much the way to do it.